been prohibited. Lisu had already opposed the request, saying that such an order would allow the court to operate in darkness and prevent his supporters from following the case. Burkina Faso's junta has expelled the UN's top official to the West African nation over a report about children caught up in the jihadist conflict. Carol Flore was declared persona non grata because of her role in drafting the report that came out in March. Covering a 2-year period, the study detailed more than 2,000 cases of reported child recruitments, killings, sexual violence and abuse, blaming Islamist insurgents, government soldiers and civilian defense forces. The military government, which came to power in September 2022 and is led by Captain Ibrahim Traore, said it had not been consulted by the UN, saying the report contained unfounded allegations. The chairperson of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the apartheid-era crimes in South Africa, Justice C.C. Kampepe, says they've heard allegations of attempts to stop prosecutions related to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission cases. President Cyril Ramaphosa established the commission in May to investigate claims that efforts were made to block the prosecutions of ETRC cases. Justice Kampepe was providing an update on the commission's work.
23 families have alleged in pending High Court proceedings that there has been political interference in the process. It is the task of this inquiry to uncover the facts about these matters, in particular about whether there was political interference that impeded the attainment of justice for the victims and their families.
Lastly, 6 former North Korean soldiers and spies arrested in the 1950s and 1960s for refusing to renounce their communist beliefs have asked the South Korean government to repatriate them to North Korea. The BBC's Jae-Sing Lee.
The men, aged between 80 and 96, are believed to be the last remaining unconverted long-term prisoners still alive in South Korea. They served decades in South Korean prisons for staying loyal to Pyongyang. The BBC spoke to one of the men 5 years ago, who said that he missed his family members back in North Korea. Seoul says it will review their requests but acknowledge difficulties in fulfilling their wish. One had said he wanted to be sent across the border on Wednesday. The last time such prisoners were returned to North Korea was in the year 2000.
Recapping on your top stories, a court in Tanzania has banned the live coverage of treason proceedings against the East African nation's main opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, who criticized the decision. Principal Resident Magistrate Franco Kiswaga said the ban would help protect civilian prosecution witnesses. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, boxing South Africa to implement a new revenue-generating strategy, while the current transfer window is set to break all records. Details of these and other stories coming up at 4:30.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 6 minutes after 4 p.m. A very good afternoon to you, Africa. Here's what we've got on your agenda today. We'll be looking at the devaluation of Botswana's national currency, which is the Pula. You'll remember that over a month ago, the government adjusted the value of the currency, this amid the decline in diamond exports. But we'll be investigating this afternoon the exact impact that this has had on business as well as the citizens in the country. In our Standard Bank feature today, we are going to be taking a look at the bank's inroads as well as their efforts in supporting the agricultural sector. This is on the back of the announcement of the 2025 Standard Bank Chenin Blanc Top 10 Challenge winners. Also coming up, Total Energies once again on the firing line in the spotlight as protesters want to get it out of Africa. That and a whole lot more coming up on Africa in Business today.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
We begin here with one of South Africa's major banks, Absa. They've reaffirmed their commitment to boosting financial performance, setting a target to raise their returns on equity to 16% by 2026, as Absa continues to trail some of its peers. Group CEO Kenny Fihla says efforts are also underway to appoint permanent leaders for key divisions, including personal and private banking, as well as corporate and investment banking. Channel Africa's economics reporter, Innocent Simosa, has the details.
The bank's highlights during the half year include a 16% increase in headline earnings per share to 1,422 cents, a 5% growth in revenue to approximately $3.1 billion and an improved ROE to 14.8% in the first half of 2025 from 14% a year earlier. Though it was still lower than its peers, Kenny Fihla is the Group Chief Executive Officer at Absa.
We are pleased to have reported a strong performance for the first half of the year, with headline earnings increasing by 17%. Our return on equity increased to 14.8% from 14%. Our earnings growth shows the benefit of our diversified footprint in our chosen markets. Meanwhile, our pre-provision profit and impairment improvements demonstrate the good progress we've made in delivering on several strategic priorities during this period.
Absa was shaken by a leadership scandal last year that resulted in the resignation of former CEO Ari Rautenbach. Meanwhile, CEO Kenny Fihla says the bank has enhanced its Pan-African review model to drive improved performance across its operations.
The completion of the reorganization of our South African retail businesses enables us to better reflect the needs of our customers and align with our long-term growth strategy. We have now also completed the review of our Pan-African operating model to position Absa for improved performance and an enhanced customer-centric approach, and are in the design and implementation phase.
Despite facing leadership turbulence with the exit of former CEO, Absa has reported a 16% rise in headline earnings per share and improved returns in the first half of 2025. Under the leadership of Group CEO Kenny Fihla, the bank says is focused on strengthening its Pan-African review model to drive future performance. While there's still ground to cover compared to its peers, the question remains, is Absa's first half results suggest a bank on a determined path to recovery and growth? Your guess is as good as mine. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Simosa in Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 10 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus now to a protest taking place, and they're led by a movement called Kick Polluters Out. They're hosting continent-wide week-long demonstrations to demand an end to what they call Total Energy's plunder and widespread destruction in Africa. The movement says it will use this week to challenge Total Energies on environmental destruction to human rights abuses and greenwashing through sponsorships. Kick Polluters Out says even though in some countries Total Energies is not currently extracting any fossil fuels, but its presence is being felt through media, sponsorships and continental influence. For more on this, we're joined on the line by Zaki Mamdu, who is the coordinator for East African Crude Oil Pipeline Campaign. A very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, Thami. Thank you very much for having me on the program. A quick correction. The week of action has been called by the Stop EACOP Coalition, the movement set up to confront the construction of the East African crude oil pipeline, and everything is being organized under the banner of Kick Total Out of Africa, of which the Kick Polluters Out movement is an integral part and a core partner within that broader campaign.
Thank you for that. Does that mean then that Kick Polluters Out has various streams, one of them being Kick Total Out?
Yes, well, absolutely, it does. And the comrades are on the forefront of exposing the greenwashing and the lies that are put forward by these multinational fossil fuel corporations who attempt to give themselves political cover and legitimacy, all while plundering and looting the continent and destroying our communities and wreaking havoc, across our communities across this continent.
So, if you could give us a summary of some of the other companies that are being targeted apart from Total Energies.
Well, during this week of action, the focus is indeed Total Energies. The reason being is because Total, while it is not the only destructive and harmful corporation of its kind. Of course, you have Shell and Eni and BP and Exxon and all of the others. But Total is very much one which is actively expanding its presence on the continent and expanding its exploration and exploitation of oil and gas in particular. And so during this week of action, communities across the continent, many of whom are, reeling under the boot of Total and its extractive ventures, coming together to say, well, enough is enough. We refuse to be beholden to the interests of multinational corporations and investor cartels, really, who profit off of the hyper exploitation, the destruction, the devastation, the displacement, the dispossession of our people, all in order to line the pockets of a multinational elite and of national elites as well, while our communities and our people and ordinary people across this continent are left to shoulder the entirety of the environmental and social costs of that.
So let's look at who the campaign is actually targeted for. Yes, Total Energies and others whom you have grouped within that foray of investor cartels who, as you say, have dispossessed locals of their land. Is it for the likes of Total Energies to fully exit from the African continent, or are you targeting this at government as well, where stricter regulations and accountability would be needed?
It's a great question. Ultimately, Total, in many ways, is doing exactly what it is supposed to be doing, right? And that is profiting at all costs. Total, as a company, and others like it, are set up to make profits and nothing else. Anything else that it does is just by the way. But its core mandate is that of pursuing profits at all costs, right? And so there is no world in which Total itself would willingly say, yes, well, we appreciate you raising your concerns, or we recognize that our operations have been so detrimental and we are leaving the continent of our own volition. And so really the demand does need to be made of African governments to cancel their licenses and contracts with Total, to expropriate Total's assets and place them under the democratic control and ownership of workers and communities, and to chart an entirely different course. Because Total, it depends. It relies on exploitation, on destruction, on violence in order to create its profits. And I must say,
Zaki, that a lot of accusations are being put, and very heavy accusations are being put at the door of Total Energies. And I wonder if you have considered the impact that their disinvestment would cause, in the sense that, yes, they are in the business of oil, and they're extracting that oil. That is their business, that is their currency, that is their commodity. What they bring into the areas where they are investing is the creation of jobs. What impact do you believe this might have economically, and how have you as the organization made sense of that?
Sure. Well, look, I think we need to understand the real implication of Total's investments, because, of course, what they will tell you is that they are creating jobs, they are creating developments and all of these things. But the reality is that it is, in fact, a form of deliberate underdevelopment. And so you look, for example, at the ECOP case study in East Africa, right, where Total is driving forward a project to build the East African crude oil pipeline, which is a massive 1,143 kilometer long pipeline from the Great Lakes region of Uganda through to the coast of Tanga in Tanzania. And the entire thing is set up to exploit the oil reserves in Uganda, in the DRC, and potentially in South Sudan as well, and take it straight to the coast of Tanzania, where it will be shipped overseas, where it will serve the energy interests of countries abroad, where it will be refined and processed and then sold back to the African people. At a higher price. And so the whole setup is one which creates the debt crisis that this continent is in already. And so there is no real actual material benefits. Of course, the revenue that the state actors and Total itself would proclaim is revenue that would largely go towards servicing debts to begin with, and would not filter into any real material benefit for impacted communities, let alone for the kind of national development coffers of states who would seek to invest in schools and education and healthcare and all of these things. And so the idea that Total is investing to the benefit of the African people is an outright lie. In fact, it is underdevelopment to the detriment of the African people. So as a campaign, we are certainly not anti-developmental, but what we are saying is that this neo-colonial extractive model of development that is being pursued is one which does not serve the developmental interests of African people. And so instead we are saying that our resources of the people of this continent should be in the hands of the people of this continent. We don't want private ownership or it to be under private ownership of multinational corporations. We want democratic public ownership, worker and community control, because ultimately it is ordinary people ourselves and the working class in itself on this continent that is the only force capable of pursuing the developmental interests of the masses of ordinary people.
Zaki, let me pose this to you once again as we wrap up today. I hear your sentiments and where it is that you are coming from, but I wonder if you're barking up the right tree, if you're knocking on the right door, because business, dare I say, is business. They are there, yes, to pursue profit, but also we hope to leave the lives of those who are part of the economics enriched and communities bettered because they are there. But is this not the mandate of government to ensure that there are policies and regulations that are in place that will prevent corporates from siphoning off what is belonging to the people of the country? In the sense that there are many more companies, perhaps, that could be put under the same umbrella. And there has to be a watchdog. Should your efforts perhaps not be targeted at government as opposed to corporate, in the sense that you would then get more long-term sustainable results from that?
Yes, well, I mean, the effort should be targeted at both. But what I would say is that we do not have any illusions in Total, or any hope, as you put it, Thami, that Total would leave the lives of people who fall within its economic system or structures any better. And in fact, there is overwhelming evidence from across the continent of the ways in which these projects are run, the ways in which they operate, the harm that they create and cause, how that is actually leaving people in, under conditions of extreme poverty, unable to put food on the table, unable to send their kids to school, unable to maintain a roof over their head, certainly unable to access quality healthcare, education, whatever else it may be. And so, there's no hope that we could ever express in a company like Total to be able to enrich the lives of our people. But yes, you are correct that as we proceed from this point and as this week of action continues to roll out, the next step is to continue building the necessary level of organization that is required to exert adequate pressure on state actors across this continent so that they can play a role and, of course, have the mandate to represent the interests of the people and ensure that these corporate actors who have no interest in the well-being of our people, to ensure that they are held to account and that they pay up for the absolute havoc that they are wreaking across our continent.
We thank you so much for your time and your contribution to our conversation this afternoon, Zaki. That's Zaki Mamdou, who is the coordinator for East African Crude Oil Pipeline Campaign. Thank you for your time.
having me. Will you be able to send me a link when it's
Yes, definitely. Our producer Zaki will be in contact with you.
fantastic? Thank you very much.
And you'll find us
Bye.
as well. I mean, and if you're listening from wherever you are and you'd like a link, to this conversation, do know that we are available on all the various social media platforms, on X, on Instagram, and YouTube. You'll find us at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. If you go as well to our website, www.channelafrica, you'll be able to find us there as well and look under the podcast for any of the conversations that we host. I do believe that we ought to get Total Energies on the line and hear their perspective and give them a right of response to the allegations that have been made. We do know that there also has been some financial and insurance backlash regarding the EACOP. In May of 2025, Germany's Union Investment pulled Total Energies from its sustainable investment funds, and this is due to allegations of abuses at the Kingfisher oil site in Uganda. And they've called for an independent human rights audit of ECOP. Total Energies has denied any wrongdoing and plans to release an internal report. And this is scheduled to come out at the end of 2025. I don't believe it has come out as yet, but they are probably worth a pursuit. So we shall pursue Total Energies for you and hear what they have to say regarding dirty business. So they say. It's exactly 24 minutes after 4 p.m.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
The KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Millvest Advisory and City of Ohlatuze, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. By positioning these regions for sustainable growth, TIFA helps drive their economic ambitions while providing access to critical capital, networks and strategic insights on investment in trade in services sectors such as tourism. Join us for TIFA 2025 from August the 27th to the 29th at Tembela Venue in Richards Bay, that's in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. So be part of the movement transforming tourism and infrastructure in Africa. It is exactly 25 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Let's take a look now at one of the controversies that have been touted all around rand manipulation. And this has been determined by South Africa's Apex Court. They're hearing the case of the rand dollar manipulation that has put the conduct of big banks under the spotlight. Now, local and international banks are alleged to have shared sensitive information such as what prices they would offer to customers and agreed on bid offer spreads. By doing this, they could control supply as well as demand for the rand. They could push up the exchange rate in directions that suited them, and they could secure bigger profits. South Africa's Competition Commission wants these banks prosecuted, but some have settled out of court, while others are continuing to fight at the courts. Dimakatso Leshuru filed this report.
It occurred between 2007 and 2013 when traders from major international and South African banks started colluding in secret chat rooms, sharing confidential information, orders and pricing, meaning they fixed bid offer spreads, keeping them artificially high and locking in profits. Senior counsel advocate Tembeka Ngubeni explains how this happened.
What the spread is perhaps can be explicable by an example. If you are a buyer of currency, as a buyer, I'm only prepared to pay R7.20 for $1, and that's the highest amount you would pay. But the holder of the dollar, the seller, could say, I am not prepared to go below $7.30, and that is the lowest. Now, the difference between what the buyer says and what the seller says is what is called the spread. And in the example that I've given of 720 and 730, the spread would be 0.10. Now you could see from the example that I've given that this is highly sensitive information because only you as either the buyer or the seller know your spread with your customers. So when we as competitors share the spread, we collude on it, we impair competition because it amounts to information sharing or price fixing.
Traders also coordinated the timing of their deals, sometimes holding back, sometimes rushing in to make sure no one in the group lost out. One of the biggest tricks was manipulating what's known as the fix, the daily benchmark rate for the rand against the dollar. By placing big trades just before the rate was calculated, they could artificially push the currency up or down. Nqokai Toby says this was an attack on South Africa's sovereignty.
But here what we have is something unique, which is that they targeted the sign of our sovereignty, which is the rand, in a perverse scheme driven by profit motives. And perhaps, if for anything else, for this reason alone, the judicial institutions of South Africa are the only institutions across the world that have a legal interest in the prosecution of this cartel. At the heart of it is the rand.
Despite it being years in the courts, the case is yet to venture into the merits of the case. It's still about technicalities, one of them being whether the parties should be conjoined and whether the Competition Commission has jurisdiction over international banks. Nqokai Toby's central argument is that the Competition Act Section 3.1 gives South Africa jurisdiction over economic conduct that occurs outside if it has effect within the Republic.
And it knows that the markets do not respect geographies. And therefore, because the markets do not respect geographies, the legal instrument needs to match the scope of market activity. And matching the scope of market activity means do not constrain the effect of the law to the geographic boundaries. So there are massive consequences to the common law-centric approach of the CAC, which are inconsistent with the provisions of Section 3.1.
He went on to criticize the Competition Appeal Court for importing common law tests of personal jurisdiction and effectiveness, which he says unnecessarily constrain the Act.
The clear language of Section 3, subsection 1, is extraterritorial. Otherwise, it makes nonsense to have that disjunctive or after within the Republic. Makes no sense. It's clearly an extraterritorial statute. Number two, even when read in the context of the statute as a whole, because the primary purpose of the cartel provisions in the Act is the protection of the consumer from prices that are a product not of competition, but are a product of fixing.
That report compiled by Dimakazo Leshuru spotlight on the rand manipulation and collusion regarding the banks. That takes us to exactly 31 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we make our way now to the markets desk with the latest market indicators. Here is Matapelo Mahape.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami, and good afternoon. A look at your financial indicators. $1 is trading at 17 rand 61 cents in South Africa. In Botswana, it's trading at 13 pula 24. In Namibia, it is trading at 17 Namibian dollars 61. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 23 kwacha 19 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 38. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 140 birr 87. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shilling 538. In Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shilling 599. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 530. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 48 Egyptian pound 31. In Tunisia, it is trading at 2 dinar 88, while in Algeria it is trading at 128 dinar 98. In Morocco, the dollar is trading at 80 dirham 9. In Angola, the dollar is trading at It's trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is at 2,875 to the US dollar. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $3,334 and platinum at $1,335 per ounce. And the price of Brent crude oil is at $66.01 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapela Mahape.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And standing by with the business of sport, here is Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Thami. A very good afternoon from the Sports Desk. So with about 2 weeks to go until the Premier League transfer window closes, clubs are still well on course to spend a record amount on new players. So data from the footballtransfers.com says that the Premier League clubs have already spent about $3 billion on players since the window opened officially in June of this year. So that is an increase of about 12.7% on the $2.57 billion that was spent during the transfer window of 2024. Now the current record stands at $3.8 billion during the 2023 transfer window. So with more deals to come and the future of several players unclear, as of the 1st of September deadline nears, it seems certain new record will be set by the Premier League football out in England. Onto this now, as the chaos in Indian League football continues to persist, voices are still coming from all quarters requesting the stakeholders to move beyond disputes to bring the deadlock to an end. So in a recent development, FIPRO, Asia and Oceania has now issued a statement raising its concerns over the evolving situation in the Indian Football League. So a lot of overseas players from Asia as well as Oceania regions play in the Indian Super League. And following the delay in the commencement of the league, some football Indian clubs have also terminated player contracts. Now this has put the livelihoods of players at risk. So with no Indian football club season in sight, clubs are still not sure about the revenue streams as well as pushing them to manage their own finances by terminating their players' contracts. Meanwhile, Tottenham Hotspur captain Christian Romero has signed a new 4-year deal to commit his future to the club. The 27-year-old Argentina centre-back joined Spurs from Atalanta in August of 2021, initially on loan before the move was made permanent the following season. So after being heavily also linked to a move to Atletico Madrid in Spain, Romero was named the club captain by the new head coach Thomas Frank, and the deal ensures that he will remain under contract in North London until 2029. Back home now, Boxing South Africa CEO Tsulu Lejaga is now excited, about his return to the organisation on a permanent basis, saying there's now more stability and a solid vision for the future. Lejaga, who has been back at BSA since October of last year as the acting CEO, was appointed permanently again in June of this year, paving the way for a fresh start for him and this organisation. He has been with BSA before in a CEO capacity between 2016 and 2020 and also improved the sport during that period. Lejaga now believes that they stand firm now on what to expect from BSA in the future.
Check this. I'm quite excited about it. If you look at it now, it's almost for 2 months. I think we're going for just for 2 months since I've now been the substantive CEO. But I was acting since last year, 12 September. Which means next month it will be 12 months where I'll say I've presided over the affairs of boxing South Africa. The work speaks for itself. If you remember, you've not heard of any intra-sectoral conflict from the boxing community out in the public. Not that we are different, but we've just created a platform where you talk about these things, thresh out the differences.
At the same time, Boxing South Africa has also struggled to attract commercial partners, with most of the focus on event organizers. However, Lejaga now talks about a revenue-generating strategy they are embarking on as an association, as well as the financial controls they have employed.
Making sure that we stretch the rent as much as possible. And we've done that very well. We've reduced our expenditure trends by far. But it came at a cost. If you would have noticed, you've not been seeing us too much on the ground and in all provinces, because we have had to contain. And then secondly, there are these things that I say have got third-party dependencies. Among those that have got third-party dependencies, the conversation that we are having with the department to assist us with some of our financial pressures, and that has actually paid off. Then there's work that we are doing with the provinces. For example, this boxing series, part of the money that rolls it out is the money that we get from the provinces through the national grant allocation.
Right, so that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 4:38 Central African Time. The KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Millvest Advisory and the city of Ohlatuze, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. As a global platform for local action, the Tourism Investment Forum Africa aims to promote secondary and tertiary cities and regions as attractive investment and tourism hubs. Be part of the movement transforming tourism investment in Africa. Join us for the TIFA 2025 from the 27th to the 29th of August at Tembela Venue in Richards Bay, KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Now, you will remember about a month ago, just over a month ago, the government of Botswana adjusted the value of the national currency, which is the pula, this in response to growing economic pressures. The currency devaluation came amid a slump in diamond export revenue, Botswana's primary source of foreign exchange. The global downturn in diamond sales has heightened pressure on the pula, which the government has been supporting through reserves. Now, at the time, the country's Minister of Finance, Ndaba Gaolate, cautioned businesses not to exploit the currency adjustment to raise prices unnecessarily. To find out what the impact of the pula devaluation has been on ordinary citizens, we joined this afternoon by our correspondent in Botswana, Shingarai Madondo. Very good afternoon to you, Shingarai.
How are you, Tati? How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good to have you with us once again. So, Shingarai, when the devaluation of the pula was announced, there were concerns that this might push up the cost of living in the country. How have the Botswana reacted to this decision, and has it indeed done exactly that, push up the cost of living in Botswana?
Thank you very much, Tony, and a very good afternoon to Channel Africa listeners. The life in Botswana for the past 3 weeks or so has been somewhat unbearable for many, especially the consumers who survive on hand-to-mouth here. Looking at the fact that the devaluation of the pula was done without much consultation, and what happened is the business Botswana, which is an aspect body that represents the business community here in Botswana, decided to actually approach the government and say, this is not what should be done, because most of the products that are consumed in Botswana are actually sold outside Botswana, and that means then that the power or the value of the product that has been the original one before the devaluation was enough to cushion the people, but the government decided otherwise. Saying it is the right way to go, looking at the fact that they want to be at par, and they're saying the power, the pula rather, which is the Botswana current, was overvalued.
There have been reports on social media and certain pictures as well that have been making the rounds. And these posts show notices coming out of some supermarkets in Botswana informing customers that prices could go up at a moment's notice. So really cautioning, consumers to be aware that any moment the prices might change. Could you tell us more about this? Has this indeed been the reality? And how is the government monitoring this to ensure indeed that citizens are not taken advantage of, as you mentioned, the value of the pula and the pricing was already cushioned in to the valuation?
Thank you very much. What happened with the retailers is that they actually gave notices after actually having taken the solution, or after having taken the decision to putting the additional prices into action, looking at the fact that a 12.5 or 10 kg of sugar has been costing between 80 pula to 120 pula. But now the price of the same product is now ranging between 160 pula to 220 pula. Looking at the fact that when the Minister of Finance, who is also the Vice President, Ngubeni, had cautioned the business community not to actually price up or to put a price hike into most of the products, looking at the fact that they were saying the pula was overvalued. But the business community, actually represented by Business Botswana, which is act as an apex body of the private sector or the Chamber of Commerce here, actually argued and say there is no way the pula was overvalued because most of these businesses actually bring their goods and services from outside the borders of Botswana. That is why the overvalue was cushioning the pula, if that is where they want to do it. But they continue to say this is what is happening. And now, like I give an example of 12.5 kg of sugar while now ranging. And most of the people here survive through manual jobs as well as the labor intensive, what they call it, which actually pays a minimum wage of about 1,000 pula. And if you are now just buying such kind of a product with extra pula, most of the people are actually crying foul here and say the government has made life very difficult for them. But intervene, the business community saying, the business community through Business Botswana, they're saying there's no way they can actually put the prices down. What they can only do is to hide the price at the moment until the prices have gone down. Looking at the fact that they are saying they have to get goods from South Africa, to be specific, because most of the products that are consumed in Botswana actually come from South Africa, and they're saying there is some sort of transport implication, fewer hikes, and all these are taken into consideration to make sure that they can survive or their business remain afloat.
If you could, Chingarai, just put this into perspective and context for us. I mean, we understand that within a week of this devaluation having taken place, the pula had once again bounced back to the rates before the devaluation. How much was the pula to the rand, let's say on the 1st of July, compared to today?
Before the devaluation, the rand to pula exchange rate was ranging between almost 1 pula to 1 rand 80 cents or 1 rand 50 cents. But soon after the devaluation, the pula and the rand is almost at the same rate, and now it is between 1 pula as to 1 rand 20 cents or 1 rand 30 cents. And in exchange or in comparison to the US dollar, this is a marginalized increase that most of the people were so surprised, because $1 was costing between about 12 pula, between 12 pula and 13 pula. But soon after the devaluation, we saw the rand, the pula to US dollar exchange rate jumping to $1 against 14 pula 50 to 15 pula, which is most of the people are saying this is a sign of the fact that what the business community has been arguing to say the pula is not overvalued is very true. That is why the exchange rate really is no much more difference between a rand and a pula. So this is what is happening. Tomorrow we are going to have the business community or the Retailers Association of Botswana will be meeting tomorrow to deliberate much in terms of, because they think the prices as we speak right now, they are not enough. So they are going to deliberate on these issues tomorrow to see at how much percentage are they going to increase further to actually cushion or to make sure that their business remain afloat.
Shingarai Madondo, we thank you so much for that update coming out of Botswana, the impact of the devaluation of the pula and how that has affected business as well as consumers. But, in as much as you look at the numbers, and there really isn't much of a variance, and you can see the numbers really having bounced back as far as the value of the pula to the rand and even the US dollar. But what remains is that the prices have already been increased. And so consumers are in a position where they are paying more for the goods that they are purchasing. We'll keep abreast of the developments coming out of Botswana with Shingarai Madondo. It is exactly 4:48 Central African Time.
This August, we celebrate the strength, brilliance, and unstoppable spirit of African women.
It was the women themselves who strove for and got the changes by lobbying, going through NGOs, and by networking.
That's you, ladies. From the boardroom to the classroom, from the marketplace to the microphone, women are leading, innovating, and transforming our continent every day.
Oh, here's to knowing that as a woman, your voice can change the world.
Your voice matters. Your story inspires. Your presence is powerful. This Women's Month, we honor you. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 4:49 Central African Time, and in this week's slot with Standard Bank, this follows the announcement of the 2025 Standard Bank Chenin Blanc Top 10 Challenge winners, Brendan Jacobs, who's the head of agribusiness, business and commercial banking at Standard Bank, joins us on the line to discuss the bank's broader agribusiness strategy as well as their commitment to South Africa's agricultural sector, and also a large focus as well on supporting premium wine exports and the country's position as a global Chenin Blanc leader, and also balancing commercial success with social responsibility in agricultural financing. Good to have you with us this afternoon. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Thank you very much, Thami, and good afternoon to the listeners.
So as executive head of agribusiness, how significant is the wine industry to Standard Bank's agricultural portfolio? And perhaps while you're at that, what role does supporting premium wine production play in South Africa's broader export strategy?
Thanks, Thami. The wine industry is obviously very important to Standard Bank within our agricultural portfolio. And as a spin-off of that, we are continuing our support of the Chenin Blanc Top 3 Awards. South African wine exports has always featured as one of the top 10 commodities contributing to agricultural exports. And within that, the premium wine production is of course vital, as it allows South Africa to defend its production share, which is just around 4% of the world's wine production.
I wonder what it is that made you, as Standard Bank, to choose to partner with the Chenin Blanc Association. Why them specifically?
Well, I think Chenin Blanc, of course, being unique to South Africa, and South Africa being part of our home, and at Standard Bank we believe Africa is a home we drive our growth. It's been now since 2014 that we've been involved, and besides supporting the Chenin Blanc Association, I think there's also a strategic alignment with global demand expanding within the wine industry, specifically into parts of the country, parts of the world such as China. We, of course, through our ICBC ICBC shareholding in Standard Bank, it plays a very important part in our broader strategy. And as part of that, we've been involved also with the Chenin Blanc Association and Wine of South Africa, taking wine producers to China to expose South Africa's finest onto the global stage.
And just on the back of that, it's worth noting that South Africa does dominate the global Chenin Blanc production with 52% of the world plantings. So how do you, as Standard Bank, see this competitive advantage translating into economic opportunities that will benefit the broader agricultural sector?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a unique product that sets us apart on the global stage. And I think South Africa has manifested itself as a preferred global supplier of Chenin Blanc, and we need to continue our growth and our focus on this particular subsegment to ensure that we maximize the great fruit quality that we have. This year again, the high quality harvest is set to further strengthen South Africa's position as a top global supplier, and that aligns with the global rise for sustainably produced premium wines.
I'm quite interested to find out what it is that informed your decision with the structuring of the prize money. You've put in place mandatory requirements for farm work upliftment, and this is rather than traditional cash prizes which one would expect. Why was that important for you to have that caveat?
Well, I think it was important for us as part of our broader social responsibility as well, to structure the prizes around farm worker upliftment rather than simply just cash prizes. I think we prioritize social responsibility and sustainable community development, and structuring it in this way has supported us in ensuring that the recognition translates into real long-term impact. Spinning off from that, we see improvement in education and health and livelihoods for the workers who make success of the wine industry possible. So it's our way of looking more broadly at the segment than just purely the great wines that we produced. And we're proud that over time, through these initiatives, there's been significant donations towards education, youth development, and healthcare projects as a spin-off.
I'd like you to perhaps just jog your memory for us for a while. You've mentioned that this partnership has been running for a good 12 years now. So you've had over a decade to actually see the fruit of your labor. Could you maybe highlight for us some of the successes and some of the developmental strides that have been made over the past decade due to this partnership?
Yeah, I think to describe everything just to the partnership would perhaps not be accurate. But I think we've seen, if you just take South African exports in holistic South African exports, we've seen significant growth in the exports of South African agricultural products, of which wine has, of course, played a part. And I think, in an economy that has shown, muted growth, we are very proud within the agricultural sector that involvement through programs such as this and others, and cooperation between various role players and stakeholders within our sector continues to see the agricultural sector being a significant contributor to growth in South African exports, but also growth in our local economies.
Some of the challenges that are being faced, and I think it's many countries around the world as far as exports to the United States are concerned, but South Africa specifically with agriculture is a country that stands to lose quite significantly within that sector. And we've seen the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, being very much at the forefront when it comes to discussions around the tariffs and the trade deals with the United States. Could you tell us how you as Standard Bank are helping your clients navigate the challenges that are currently being faced within the agricultural sector? Because it is a bit of an unstable sector right now, considering all the moving parts and the changes that are taking place on a global platform.
Sure. Yes, I think the first thing, and you mentioned it there, is that South Africa is not unique in this respect. And the other part to remember is that I think there's been, of course, a lot of noise around the tariffs from the USA, but to keep in context that only about 4% of South Africa's agricultural exports are to the United States, and within that, it's quite concentrated within specific produce. Wine being part of that, but also mostly in the citrus and the nut space. So when you break that down, it's very important, and we've done that to be aligned to our clients that we know are exposed, and to plan with them in terms of scenario planning for opportunities to potentially explore other markets. The issue, of course, has been that there's been quite a bit of uncertainty as to when some of these tariffs would be in effect. We recently got the 30% coming into play, but before that there was some uncertainty. And even now, I think Minister Steenhuisen and Minister Tau, of course, both on record as saying that an improved offer in terms of our trade proposal to the states have been put out. So I don't think it's the end of this chapter. In amongst all of that, I think at Standard Bank we pride ourselves in being steadfast with our clients to assist them to both deal with challenges and also maximize opportunities. And as part of that, we're working closely with those clients that do have exposure and that have concentrated exposure, especially to the States. Luckily, those are limited numbers, and we're working with those clients to look forward to see which alternatives could be explored or which contingency plans can be set afoot.
Brendan Jacobs, we thank you so much for your insight this afternoon. Very much appreciated, sir.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you.
Great
Have
afternoon.
a great one. Thank you. That's Brendan Jacobs. He's head of agribusiness, business and commercial banking at Standard Bank. He brings us to exactly 4:59. Bonjour, bonjour, bonjour. Vous d'Afrique coming up. What do you have in store for us, Joël?
Merci, bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Alors aujourd'hui, on parlera de la coordinatrice résidente de l'ONU qui a déclaré persona non grata au Burkina Faso, mais aussi en Côte d'Ivoire, remous au sein du PDCI-RCA, et aussi pour les grands titres, inquiétudes grandissantes dans le secteur minier en Guinée. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci de rester connecté. Merci, Thami.
Merci, Joël. You sound like a song. You really do. Une chanson, you really do.
Mélodie.
Mélodie, yes. Oh, mélodie and chanson.
Mélodie. La chanson est mélodieuse. Yeah.
That's Joël. Actually, the Joël's coming up for Vue d'Afrique. For myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the entire team at Africa in Business, you have yourself a splendid day further.